So now that you know the assignment description and the timeline that you have for completing the assignment, you can begin asking yourselves these thought questions to get the wheels churning and start brainstorming about how might you tackle this problem of this paper. So I've offered a few questions and broken them down based on the controlling verbs of the assignment description, which is interpret, critique, and analyze. So to interpret your evidence, both the primary source evidence is going to be the main bulk of your essay is going to be in interpreting and critiquing that. But you'll also want to spend a little bit of time critiquing, interpreting, and analyzing the secondary source evidence. So you can ask these questions to the advertisements and representations of the product or service that you'd like to analyze, as well as the secondary quotations that you find. So for interpret, what does this advertisement mean on the surface level and on a deeper level? In other words, what are the denotations and connotations? What is the sense, meaning, and significance of this representation or this source? Secondly, how is each layer of meaning created? What words, symbols, images, or tones communicate the messages I interpret from this advertisement? So in other words, what are the semiological processes of association that create those bonds between the signifier and the signified? So look at your product or service that you are analyzing as a type of a signifier. It's not merely the product itself. It's not only the service itself, but this advertised product or service is a signifier that carries along with it signified meanings on the surface, so on the denotative level, and deeper on the connotative level. So those are those cultural associations. So you can ask yourself those two questions to interpret your evidence. Critique. So questions for critiquing your evidence. What rhetorical strategies persuade the audience to accepting the message of the ad? So in other words, how does the ad appeal to logos, ethos, and pathos? And how do those strategies succeed or fail? So more than just saying this appeals to logos, ethos, or pathos, identify the specific appeal using the vocabulary from our lesson and from our reading assignment. Look for those fallacies. So if something isn't quite right in those appeals, then it might fail or it might be deemed as manipulative. So you can make a value judgment and critique it that way, saying that this advertisement manipulates the viewers. Also, remember from what is critical thinking, we have those basic 10 standards for evaluation. So throughout your essay, you're going to be wanting to use more than one, but I mean minimum at least one of those standards for critiquing this evidence. Analyze. What are the unspoken values, ideas, concerns, or beliefs embedded in this message? What are the possible consequences or impacts of this message for specific groups? In other words, what underlying assumptions and extended implications can I analyze from this ad? So the underlying assumptions are those sort of unspoken values, ideas, those a priori concepts that are taken for granted and not questioned or explicitly demonstrated. So the kind of hidden ideas. As a critical thinker, it's going to be up to you to infer those ideas from the text, because the text won't always say. And I mean text like anything that you're studying. So these advertisements are a text that we're studying. And they do have underlying implied messages beneath those surface level messages. And that's how you really dig in and analyze and use that combination of creative and critical thinking to understand the deep meaning. And then, so those were the underlying assumptions. And we also have the extended implications. So these are the consequences or impacts of those layers of meaning, those layers of messages that you find in the sources that you analyze. And this again is how you are going to use creative and critical thinking together to think beyond the text itself, linking it out to some real world issues or contexts. And then the last thought question under analysis is, how can I group together my sources to make generalized claims about how advertisements use symbolism and rhetoric to communicate messages? In other words, what subtopics and claims will your advertisement evaluation argument explain and support? So another key skill for analysis is not just looking at each individual example in deep detail, but actually generalizing across examples. So looking for pieces that might work together in one paragraph to really support a claim about this group of advertisements. And that's more what we refer to as synthesis, where you're taking a variety of sources and kind of stitching them together into one topic or one kind of message or statement. So throughout your essay, you don't want to compose a list of 5 body paragraphs that analyze your evidence one by one. Instead, you want to try to find 2 or 3 or maybe 4 connections that bring in multiple advertisements and talk about the way that that group of advertisements uses one common technique or commits one common flaw in trying to express its message to the viewers.